Everybody knows the poster version of Micheal Jordan. The smile, the logo, the 6 rings, the guy selling you sneakers and cologne. But sit down with the men who actually shared a court with him, and you get a completely different person. Ask them off camera, off script, no filter, and one theme comes up over and over.
Oh, Micheal Jordan having a go at it.
Something in Jordan flipped the second he felt disrespected, and once that switch went, there was no talking him back down. These are the stories the players themselves still can't believe happened, told the way they actually remember them, not the highlight reel version. We're starting with a teenager who had no idea what he was walking into.
I got a few buckets, and I think the campers knew I was the only high school kid, and so...
A young, hyped-up O.J. Mayo showed up to Jordan's summer camp already being called the next big thing. And he figured a pickup run against a 40-something Jordan was his moment to prove it. So he started chirping, "You can't guard me, you can't stay in front of me," the usual high school bravado. Jordan didn't say much back. He just quietly cleared the gym, sent every camper to bed, emptied the building, and turned a friendly camp session into a private execution. Mayo didn't score. He got posted up, faded on, and lectured the entire time. He still brings up that footage today like it's proof of a war crime, practically begging people to go find the tape so they'll believe him. That kind of quiet, cold response was almost scarier than the loud version.
Into the game in the second half, he ended up with 44, and I ended up with 12.
And Reggie Miller found that out the hard way, except his humiliation came with an audience. As a rookie, Miller got fed a little confidence by a veteran teammate during a meaningless exhibition game, needling him about how Jordan was supposedly coasting. Miller took the bait and started running his mouth mid-game. At halftime, Miller had 10 points and Jordan had 4. Miller assumed he'd won. He hadn't even started the fight yet. In the second half, Jordan dropped over 40 points on him alone.
Micheal Jordan out of nowhere on that.
In the cloud, 4-3, in and out, rebound Micheal Jordan.
And walked off, reminding Miller, in no uncertain terms, never to talk to him like that again. Miller says to this day, he never crossed that line with Jordan a second time.
Okay, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry, Black Jesus. I'm so sorry.
Not once, not ever. And he still winces telling the story decades later. Gary Payton thought he was different. The glove built his entire reputation on getting into people's heads. And when Jordan showed up on his schedule during the preseason, Payton treated him like any other target, mouthing off, dropping 20 on him in limited minutes, feeling untouchable. What Payton didn't realize is that preseason meant nothing to Jordan, and the disrespect had been logged and filed away. The next matchup wasn't preseason anymore, and Jordan treated it like a debt collection that had come due. By the time the night ended, whatever confidence Payton had built was completely gone, and he says that single game taught him more about respect than anything else in his career. Years later, he'd become one of the rare defenders who got under Jordan's skin, but that lesson never stopped stinging. Now, if you assumed that lesson stuck with every rookie who came after him, think again. Because not long after, a loud, fearless Kevin Garnett strolled into Chicago, fully convinced none of that history applied to him. KG was running hot that night, mouthing off at Jordan mid-possession like he was just another matchup. Jordan didn't respond immediately. He let it simmer. And then, without warning, the entire game tilted.
Wow. Watch the quickness that he pivots here. There it is right there.
Chicago ripped off a stretch so lopsided that Garnett's team couldn't buy a bucket for minutes at a time. And by the time it was over, Garnett was quietly apologizing at the free throw line, hoping the beating would just end. He says it's the only time in his career he ever backed all the way down from a fight, and it happened because of one man. Not every grudge started with words. Sometimes, all it took was a gesture. During a playoff series, a young Orlando guard stripped Jordan late in a close game and told reporters afterward that the version of Jordan wearing a different jersey number just wasn't the same explosive player anymore. It was meant as a passing dig. Jordan heard about it and by the time the teams met again the following year, he'd already switched back to his old number for good measure. He spent the next several games making sure that single comment followed that player for the rest of his career, dropping monster performances night after night until his own teammates started to feel sorry for the guy standing across from him.
Rattle his chain. So I went over there, tapped him on the shoulder, and said, "Hey man, if you don't turn into Air Jordan, we're gonna blow you out today."
Even Jordan's closest peers weren't immune, and Magic Johnson only ever crossed that line once in his entire career. During Dream Team practices, the roster split into two squads that kept battling to a draw day after day. On the fourth straight tie, Magic decided to test something he'd never tried before, walking over and telling Jordan that unless he turned into an actual superstar, his team was about to get run off the floor. Jordan's eyes went wide, and from that moment, the practice session stopped looking like practice. He drilled a three in Magic's face, then another, then rose up on a switch against one of the tallest, most athletic defenders in the world, and spun a reverse dunk through traffic that left the entire gym frozen. Magic still calls it the single greatest thing he's ever watched a human being do on a basketball court. And he says it was the exact moment everyone in that gym understood the league didn't belong to him and Larry Bird anymore. Even Jordan's own teammates weren't safe once the target moved off the court entirely. During a card game before an exhibition against a rookie, teammates jokingly bet Jordan he couldn't drop 40 points on the kid.
This dude is just insane. So he had about 34. And he walks over to the bench.
Jordan, exhausted and sore from a back-to-back, agreed to the bet anyway, then went out and hit almost exactly that number before storming to the bench mid-game to collect his winnings from the teammates who doubted him. In front of the entire arena, in front of the coaching staff, in front of everyone. It wasn't about the money. It was never about the money. And then there's the story teammates still call the most savage. Up big late in a game where Jordan was having a genuinely rough shooting night, a bench player on the other team decided to needle him about it, telling him his shot just wasn't falling. Within 10 minutes, Jordan had scored more than 20 unanswered points, capped off by a fadeaway that he drilled directly in front of that same bench, turning around afterward to make sure the message landed exactly where it was aimed. His own teammate had to step in afterward just to keep the peace, warning the bench player never to talk to Jordan's matchup again unless he wanted a real fight on his hands. Isaiah Thomas, who spent years building an entire defensive scheme specifically to slow Jordan down, put it best when he said that playing against him in his prime sometimes felt like getting treated like a high schooler on a grown man's court. No matter how well you thought you'd played, the scoreboard told a different story by the fourth quarter. Thomas says he and his teammates would leave the arena convinced they'd competed, only to look up and see a number next to Jordan's name that made the whole night feel like a formality. That's the version of Micheal Jordan the resume never shows you. Not the 6 rings or the logo, but the guy who couldn't let a single comment go unanswered. Ask any of them today and they'll tell you the same thing. They respected him more for it, even the ones who never fully recovered. Because the moment you disrespected Micheal Jordan, you weren't just playing a game anymore. You were paying a bill that always, always came due.